Today on Locked On Rockies, what went right for a winning weekend with the Rockies?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 13th day of September in the year 2022. I'm your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every single day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right place, because that's what we do around here. We talk about the Colorado Rockies each and every day on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies to know where you need to go. We're also streaming live on YouTube, and if you catch the show live while we're streaming, we can answer your questions live. So I encourage each and every one of you to go subscribe to our YouTube channel, know when we go live, and then get into the live chat so you can ask your Rockies questions and have them answered live right here on the show. Today on Locked On Rockies, wanted to stay on the positive side, wanted to kind of keep the good mojo of flowing here, as we're going to talk about what went right for the Rockies over the last homestand there. The Rockies end up winning back-to-back series, winning both series at home there, taking down the Brewers and the Diamondbacks. A nice little four-game winning streak there as well, before things kind of came crashing down on Sunday. We're going to talk about what was successful and why it's important to kind of look at that. And we'll also, unfortunately, have to highlight some of the stuff that wasn't so successful. And I want to start with scoring runs. The Rockies in this series, they are on this homestand, they scored, let's see, 35, 39, they scored 45 runs over the course of 6 games. An absolutely wonderful amount of runs. That's a lot of runs. That's at least, the Rockies score at least 4 runs in every single ball game that they play at home. Exactly what you need to do, like we talked about, when teams come into Coors Field. The offense has to be there. We've seen it come up short a lot this year, but in this series, the Rockies were able to come up big on offense. And one of the things that's also nice about the Rockies in this one is we kind of saw a mix of sometimes jumping out ahead. It didn't pan out for the Rockies on Friday. They come up. The thing where we'll talk about the issue being big bad innings for the Rockies, especially at the hands of pitching. But we look into the second game here against the Brewers, and Milwaukee gets out ahead. They're up at 5-1 at one point. But what do the Rockies do? They come back and they score late, putting it on, scoring, and going up big there in extra innings. So probably one of the nicest wins for the Rockies of the season, I would say, that game on Tuesday against the Brewers, where they're able to come back and win 10-7 in that one. Going down 5-1 early is no easy task to come back from, even with Coors Field. That's one of the things that worked well. Late run scoring and late run potential for the Rockies. You didn't get so much of it later in the game, as the Rockies did a lot of their damage early on against the Brewers in Wednesday's game. But when you saw the game against Arizona, a very similar situation where the Rockies luckily were able to bounce back with some late offense. In the game on Friday, the absolute bonkers game, as we saw with the Rockies going up 8-0 at some point there, with then getting up the 9 runs. The Rockies were then able to go score another 5 runs in the second half of the ball game. This is an important thing for the Rockies to be able to continue to do. Not just score early in the beginning of the game and then just once everyone settles down, go flat like we've kind of seen a lot of it. Good, consistent scoring throughout the game, especially bouncing back from a 9-run inning. That's it. You need your offense to do something to get you back into that game, and you have to slowly chip away. Even though the lead at that point is 8-9, it's only a 1-run lead. It kind of feels huge. The momentum's completely shifted. The air and the energy is completely with the other team. The Rockies going and scoring late. Massive. They do it again for the win on Saturday, shut out the first 5 innings, and then the Rockies get the scoring done all in one big inning there. 4 runs there in the 6th. It's good to see that the Rockies later in games here in this series were able to put up crooked numbers and score a lot of runs. Even in the game, they were getting blown out, and Arizona dominated a couple of 3 spots there. Not too much in terms of offense there we're gonna have to dive into the curse. I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot about the cursed green City Connect uniforms. We'll have to dive into that there, but that's a big thing for the Rockies to do, to stay in those shootouts at Coors Field and to stay in against teams that have had their number or have been able to kind of keep them in check. Now let's flash that back. Let's go to the previous 6 games for the Rockies, and they were all on the road against some pretty good pitching. The last 2 series on the road, the Rockies faced the Braves and the Reds. On the road, the Rockies scored a total of 15 runs in the course of 6 games. I mean, that's you when you're looking at, of course, they played the Braves. The Braves have great pitching, but they also play the Reds in 2 games, and you get blanked by them 10-0 in the finale on Sunday. The huge disparity between the runs being scored at home and the road, obviously a problem faced all the time, but something that continues to kind of perplex and ponder. But what truly is the difference for this Rockies team? Is it really just Coors Field? Is it solely the comfort of Coors Field, or is there really something about the approach, that the way that this team looks and goes about on the road that gets in the way? Because that's a huge. I mean, the Rockies scored 30 more runs in 6 games at home against a good team in Milwaukee and a team that's played really well in Arizona with a couple of really good pitchers in there as well. I mean, they're not the Braves staff by any means, but the Rockies saw some good arms in this series, and I just refuse to believe that the only answer for the Rockies' road and home splits can just be the Coors Field effect. There has to be something else there that's making this such a big difference. 35-run difference there. Again, I am factoring into who the Rockies faced on that road trip, but let's go to the previous trips on the road here. The Rockies were in St. Louis, and let's see, it was just a quick road trip there. It was just a series in St. Louis, and we saw how that series. They went to St. Louis, and they scored 5 runs in a total of 3 games. So maybe double that, another 10-run performance on the road. This has to be something that is more of a focus for the Rockies. The road is always, I know, historically been a tough place for the Rockies, but the run fall off is massive. It's a huge issue, and it's something that we see the Rockies are able to generate these runs. The Rockies scored 45 runs in winning 2 series, but you keep going back and back into series on the road, and you're barely seeing the Rockies even break the 4-run barrier there on the road at all. There's been a couple of times where the Rockies have put up some numbers, but in reality, it has no surprise to anybody. But there has to be more to it than just throw my hands up for Coors Field. But when we're talking about things that worked, they took advantage of being at Coors Field. And one thing that's really encouraging about that stretch for the Rockies, in which we wanted to see it on the bigger scale, and it didn't pan out enough this year, is an approach that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But before we do that, make sure that your approach to the world of betting is through BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Week 1 in the NFL is already done. I know it was disappointing last night for us Broncos fans, but hey, lots more NFL and college football action betting to do here as we keep moving through the early part of the season. And you can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including all the games all year long. And guess what? There's plenty to bet on when it comes to baseball as well. Lots of Major League Baseball action for you to get in on. Make sure that you are heading to betonline.net. You can use the website or your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. It's your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores at betonline.net. That's betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. Remember, if you are subscribed to Locked On Rockies on YouTube, we let you know when we go live, and you can ask your questions and have them answered live as part of the show. But I was talking about an approach, something the Rockies did here in this homestand that led to some success. And this is a philosophy. It's just clutch. We've talked about clutch performances a bit this year, and when you string together 4 wins in a row, when you get something moving like that, and when you come back multiple times and bounce back again, while facing some adversity in the game, that's just the clutch factor. And it's good to see the Rockies were getting some clutch performances from players that we've been searching for that. And one of the players in that being Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon doing some damage here in the series. He did get the home run in the loss on Sunday, but he's still also someone that's been swinging the bat relatively well here. Gets the lead off on the Friday game, goes 2 for 4, a couple of RBIs and a walk in that game there, which when players like Ryan McMahon are stepping up and coming up big, that helps your team. It helps. We've already seen articles and we've already seen stuff of McMahon entering into a mentorship and leadership role with some of the younger guys. Performances like this help. It solidifies that McMahon is a contributor. It solidifies that what McMahon can do. But with the clutch performances and the Rockies coming up big, it's another thing of why is it so few and far between? What was it about, the air that day, or just the way the pitcher was throwing, that the Rockies were able to bounce back and stay in some of these ball games and come back and win? I mean, coming back from a 9-run inning, I mean, you'd imagine that's all the momentum sucked out. That is just something that I don't know how you focus on that. I don't know how you sit and you say, yes, it's great. It feels good that the Rockies were clutch in this series, but what does that mean big picture? How do we get that to happen more regularly? How can the Rockies avoid all these 1-run losses? How can the Rockies avoid all of these close games, all of these close disappointments that they've had to deal with? That one's harder to pin down. It's something that I don't know if it's team construction or what it is that it's going to take for the Rockies to get consistency and consistent performances. I think in a lot of ways the Rockies have underperformed this year, but I think we also got to see more of who a lot of these players were. And hopefully throughout the rest of this year, we can see more continuous clutch performances. If the Rockies over these last 20 games can finish above 500 in the last 20 with some nice late comebacks and playing solid ball like they did in 4 out of the 5 games, it is really something, I'm looking to see more and hopefully more from some of the young guys too, if they can come up big in certain situations. But it's always good when Ryan McMahon can contribute and when the team's able to step up and make some impacts here. At Rock's Hot Takes in the live chat says, a lot of contribution from our rookies these past series. Future is bright. However, do we have an outfielder overload? And what do we do with CJ given the Tolia call up? That's the a lot of good questions. Yes, the outfield does have overload, but as we saw this year, it's good to have outfield depth. The Rockies do have been able to at least have a lot of players to fill in. But I think there's going to be some players that their time might be done, or really their role is going to be diminished here. The one thing in the outfield that you got to remember is what happens when Chris Bryant comes back next season. What does that mean for some of these other players? Is Sam Hilliard really going to continue to have a role or a spot here other than for depth? Is he going to get out there? Can you move any of your outfielders? Do you want to add to some of the outfielders? What is the Rockies' approach to free agency in the offseason this year? I mean, as we saw at the trade deadline, it could just be stand pat. We like what we have. We're just going to troll out the same thing that we had this year, just hopefully with more Chris Bryant. But I think you're going to see, again, Charlie is going to play right field, but he's going to DH a lot more. You're going to see Randall Grichuk. You're going to see Jonathan Daza. And you're going to see Chris Bryant, hopefully. That's the outfield. And anyone outside of that, Chuck's going to get in there, and then you can kind of move that around. That's going to help with some of your depth and some of your rotation there. But outside of that, I'd like to see the Rockies maybe go into some different directions and maybe see what they can do. Jonathan Dawes is a pretty darn good center fielder, though, so far. A nice option still for the Rockies. But your outfield for next year will be Bryant, Daza, Grichuk, and how they handle the overload, we'll see. But again, when you're overloaded, you do have that depth for a position that needs it, especially given look at some of the injuries and some of the stuff we've seen with the Rockies so far this year. And what do the Rockies do with CJ? He's gonna play first base. He's gonna DH, and him and Tolia are gonna. I don't know. I don't know what that means moving forward, but he's got one more year on his deal. I think you could potentially see Tolia not on the major league roster at the beginning of next year. I would imagine he's going to stay up here for the rest of this season. But you're going to have to get him as much playing time as possible, and you got to keep CJ Cron's bat in the lineup in terms of the possible run generating and the fact that he is a key part of the offense. So it's going to probably end up this year for these last 20 games. You'll probably see a little more Tolia, I would imagine. CJ Cron getting into that DH. You're going to see a lot of rotating of the DH there. Tolia might also play some time in the outfield just so Cron can continue to play first base and still get Tolia some reps. Grichuk might be not in the lineup when you have Tolia play right field there or something of that nature. I bet you see a little bit of that as well. Got to let the rookies play. And one thing that is to note, I got this from Renee Descartes' newsletter there. The Rockies, we're excited by Montero's offense, but what does that defense can use a little bit of work. It needs a little bit of priming. But, all the Rockies defense this year has been a little bit of rough. So hopefully maybe an offseason, maybe with Montero being up, him and McMahon can really work on some stuff together. Not only McMahon can teach him some of the stuff and that, but hopefully McMahon can retool and rekindle and get back to a Gold Glove caliber season. That would be a major improvement for the Rockies there. And speaking of the Rockies, well, guess what? There is indeed a baseball game tonight. Let's talk about it. Let's take a look here. One thing we didn't mention what the Rockies did that was successful and cool this weekend. Ending the scoreless streak of Zach Gallen there. CJ Cron, we're talking about what do you do with him? Well, got to keep him in there. He does stuff like, hits the ball and breaks up scoreless inning streaks. It's something that a nice little, it's nice that the Rockies were on the right side, the right side history, the ones that breaking it up, not the ones that continued it. Okay, let's preview the game. Let's take a look at who's on the bump. Let's take a look at what we're watching tonight for the Colorado Rockies. But before we do that, here's this. Okay, on tap. I said on top. On tap is what I wanted to say. For tonight, we got Chad Kuhl and going up against Michael Kopech. Here, let's take a look at Kopech's number here. 3.78 ERA with a 4.9 record, a whip of 1.22 and 114 innings pitched, 102 strikeouts, 57 walks, and 14 home runs given up. A lot of similarities here, but just a little bit more performance, a little less runs given up here for Kopech when it compared to Chad Kuhl. Chad Kuhl sitting at 6-8. 5.38 ERA, a whip of 1.51, and innings pitched 117, 127 hits there in those innings, 92 strikeouts, 50 walks, and 22 home runs. Interesting there, less innings pitched, more walks given up for Kopech there. A good disciplined approach for the Rockies is exactly what they're going to need to do to get base runners on and give them opportunities to score. Give yourself the opportunity to break out of that funk on the road. Score some runs. Let's get a crooked number early, especially if you're going to be given free bases. But you look at the draft, the big difference here, a lot fewer hits given up by Kopech in this season and including home runs, leading to that better, some of those better numbers. But more wins for Chad, a few more innings pitched as well, but it should be a nice kind of matchup of similar pitchers. We should see the Rockies hopefully the Rockies don't necessarily get dominated in this one, but we have seen them be pretty strikeout prone there. Kopech with 10 more strikeouts than Kuhl as well, so a little bit more strikeout potential here from the White Sox starter tonight in the interleague play. Looking for, some stuff from CJ Cron as well. Looking at the lineup so far for, the young guys, some people that aren't always in there, Tolia and Trejo, the ones in the lineup so far here tonight. But First pitch just a few hours away. We'll be breaking it all down and seeing what's up here on Locked On Rockies, talking about it here. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you all so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Stay up to date with all things Colorado sports with the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast, which you can find free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. You can also stay up to date with all things Major League Baseball with the Locked On MLB podcast. Just search Locked On MLB on your favorite service. You can follow the show at LO Rockies on Twitter, me at Paul Holden 33. We'd love your subscription on YouTube. It's a massive help to us, and it lets you know when we go live. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.